All right. So, like I said, we're over halfway through the sew
Yeah.
along for the Everybody shirt if you haven't been following along. And like we always say, even if you're not making the shirt now or in the future, if it's just not something you're interested in, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't watch, because Janet teaches lots of tips and tricks, and especially the Islander sewing system method, which allows your sewing to be faster and look more professional and more fun.
Absolutely more fun. And we get those testimonies almost every week here. Either the fact that it's more fun or that it's more successful. And that's fun in itself. But, when we worked with Jessica and I were in charge of the National Sewing Council at one point. We have an extra guest on set
Yes.
today. And
The growth.
we did a national poll. And why do you sew? That was the main question. And the answers came back for the fun, the creativity, and that was pretty much it. I mean, there were people obviously that sew because they want to get things to fit right, or they want things in the colors or the fabrics that they enjoy. But by and large, the average sewer was sewing because they just enjoy it. They feel a great creative, the process is creative. They feel a sense of accomplishment, which is always a good thing.
Yes, I have a stage 5 clinger, Janice.
Oh, he's
Listen,
sitting in your
it's-
chair. He thinks you're Brenda. Brenda lets.
No, he just does this now with everybody.
He doesn't do it with me, but I always sit in the back
Yeah,
of my
but I'm
chair.
like sitting further up.
If
to
you sit
type.
forward, he steals the rest of your chair. But I blame Brenda because he never did that to anybody
blame
else
Brenda.
until Brenda came along, and she always
For your
speaks.
dog's weirdo behavior.
Yeah, he comes up and sees extra chair, and she goes, "Oh, sorry," and then she'll scoot forward so he can get in there.
He's an odd one.
Yeah, he is.
All right. So, yeah, we're going to move forward with the shirt today. We did the burrito last week with the collar.
Yes, I hope everyone was successful with their burritos. I think they were. No one called with any disasters or questions. So I'm excited about that because we've never done the collar burrito online before. It's always part of an in-person class or class that you purchase online.
Well, looky there, you special people.
Yeah, I think
got
so. It was time. It was time.
You got the big tips for free. But before we get started, if you didn't already see the newsletter Janet sent out, you said that yesterday, right?
Yes,
I think I got it
yesterday. Well, at midnight, yeah.
We have I'm sorry, I'm just getting pushed
Flannel.
further. How does a
100%
dog
cotton.
this small be this mighty? New flannel. Janet got some new flannel in, and it's behind me. I'm blocking it. This isn't all of it. You can find it on our website. I'll post the link. But let me zoom in on some of this.
We got 11. If you got the newsletter, you saw that. There's 11 flannels. And there's also some brush cottons, and there is a beautiful brush twill as well. So there's lots of really nice fall shirting. We were getting really low on shirting, and so I decided, well, it's fall, let's do, and these make the best holiday gifts because it's time for a nice cozy shirt. So these brushed twills and the flannels. Now the flannel is going to be thicker, a little more warm, but the brushed twills and the brushed cottons, they have that same softness on one side. A flannel's a little thicker and it has a soft texture on both sides. It's treated on both sides. The brushed fabrics are only treated on the right side, so they're not as heavy. So if you have someone who, is just looking for a regular sports shirt, but a fall sports shirt, that would be excellent. The the flannels that I got, of course, we love them for the easy shirt. So the easy shirt is the shirt pattern where you can make a regular button-down shirt with a collar. Or you can make that same type of shirt and put a hood on it. So there's two options in that pattern, and those flannels just make up so nice in that shirt, in the easy shirt.
Yes. So Josie says, I would love to sew with flannels, but matching is a challenge for me. But we have a video on that, right?
Yeah.
On our YouTube page, Josie, we have a video about matching.
How to cut out plaids to make sure they match. And Josie, you're going to be excited to see this. I call it my recipe for cutting out plaids, because when I make a plaid shirt, I've got to have that side seam match, and you absolutely want the center front to match. You don't want those plaids askew there. But I don't want to match every single plaid, like the pocket, like the cuffs, the yoke. So I put all of those on the bias. So I give you lots of tips and tricks on how to match the plaids in the places that they're going to be right in your face. And then I give you some ideas about what you can cut on the bias, because you don't have to match anything when you cut it on the bias. And it actually adds some interest. Makes the shirt look a little spiffier. Oops. So take a look at that. It's under tips and tricks, or tips and techniques. What's it called, Jess?
The playlist is called Sewing Tips and Tricks.
Yep.
And I am going to put the link to the matching plaids right now in the comments.
I think you'll find it really helpful. It's not a long video. It's actually pretty quick. And you could, when you get ready to cut your plaid, you can go back. But I want you to go outside your comfort zone when you can, when you're ready. It's a little scary at first, but once it's done, you feel such a great sense of pride and accomplishment, because it'll be a beautiful shirt. And, so many of the ready-to-wear, especially the less expensive ones, they don't match the plaids down the side. And they will match them in the center front, but they just let everything else go. And so when you walk in with that shirt where it's matched so beautifully and everything, you just have such a great sense of pride.
And it's kind of one of those things that people might not notice that it matches, especially if they don't sew.
Right.
But they notice if it doesn't match.
And they also notice, they may not notice why, but they notice it's a beautiful shirt. It's a little special. Yeah. And if they're not a sewer, like Jessica said, they may not say, gee, why is that so special? Because the plaids are all matched. No, but they're going to say that's a really sharp shirt.
All right. Jean says she's making the Western shirt for her bull rider grandson.
Ooh. She's
watching the lessons and learning. So, Jean, I'm going to ask you, please share that with us when you're
when
finished.
You get it done, yeah.
Either post on our Facebook page so everybody can see it, or if you're not into that sort of thing, email it to us, islandersewing@comcast.net.
Yeah, we'd love to see that.
All right. So are we ready to get moving on the shirt, or did you have anything else?
I think I'm good. I'm good if you are.
So what are we doing today before we get
Well, we're going to start. We're starting on page 17 of the book. Is this backwards by any chance? Or
no, it shouldn't be backwards.
Okay.
On here it is, but not when they see it.
Okay. So page 17 and 18 is what we're going to be working on, and 17 and 18 we will accomplish moving over to page 19. Unless something really odd happens, that's my plan today, and I don't see any reason why we can't do it. So here we go. Yeah. Sound stays good. The camera stays good. Nothing freezes
Seam allowance stays good.
Yep. The dog
marking stays
comfortable.
Good. Yeah. All right. I will get the camera and we can get moving.
Alrighty, let's see. I'm going to pull my tools together that I'm going to use today. Okay, so we're starting with our overlap and underlap. And I keep the pattern piece with these specifically because look how similar they look. They don't look really much different, but they are, and it's important. So keep these with, I mean, today I had them separated, and when I went to put them back together, I had to do a little sanity check to make sure I was doing the right thing. So this is our underlap, and this is our overlap, and they both have fold lines on them. And you're going, before you ever sew anything, you've got to fold on those lines and press it over. And so what I do is, this is a 1/4 of an inch. I measure it with my little ruler, and then I just come along with my chalkener and I mark that at a 1/4 of an inch, and then take it over to the iron to press it down. So that's all you need to do. Get both of those ready. Actually, get all 4 ready at the ironing station, and then you can begin to apply them. So I'm, like I said, I'm using my little ruler. You need a tool to mark with. We love the chalkener, of course. And then we'll be using the tailor points, and they're going to be very key. And you're going to see where we have to go in and clip. You don't want a big scissor. One, because we talked about how they're not sharp, but they also inhibit the view of what you're doing because they're so much bigger, and that can be disastrous. Okay, and I'll probably be using my magnifier today, my Optivisor, and I hope I won't be using my stitch ripper, but you never know. So, all right, so you've got 2 sleeve pieces. And eventually they're going to sew together like that. But before we do that, we have to put the underlap and overlap down here. Put these up here. Okay, so we're going to start with, right, I'm going to do it by the book, people. Okay.
No,
so,
she's not.
I'm going to try. So we're going to start with the overlap, which is on this side of the sleeve, the larger piece. So sleeve, and we call that the sleeve front. So this is the front of the sleeve, and the really narrow part is the back of the sleeve. So on this front of the sleeve, and there should be notches here. Let's see. Oh, I don't have any notches. Brenda, how did I miss the notches on this one? You know what? I might. Oh, I did. This is what I was trying to avoid for the camera, because it's hard to show that little slit. But I do have my little slit here, but I'm going to mark it with some chalk so you can see it as well. Now, can you see that, Jess?
Mm-hmm.
I did make a little slit, and those of you who have used our patterns and follow Islander, you know that we don't cut notches out, we make little slits. No, I have a good pair. And but on this particular fabric that I'm using, the lawn, or well, I think it's typewriter, but it's the same thing, it is so fine, I worry about those slits growing. So I took such tiny slits for that reason. In a regular shirting, a basic fabrics other than knits, you can cut halfway to the seam allowance and you'll be fine. All right, so this is the underlap. We'll put this aside, and here's our overlap, and we've already pressed it under. So now we're going to stick it on here and match up the notch. And that is right side of the overlap. This is the wrong side of the shirt. Remember, with Islander sewing systems, we don't do home sewing methods where they normally sew things to the right first and then turn them to the back. That's not how we do it. So it's counterintuitive to your basic sewing instructions that you've followed in the past. So, you know, maybe make a note or just try to keep yourself on track with that. So all we have to do is just stitch this at 1/4 of an inch. It's pretty straightforward here. Okay, so that light was in your way.
Is it good enough for you?
Yeah, I think I'm fine right now. I'll let you know. It does get a little dark with this fabric. All right, my construction stitch length is a 3. I almost started on a 4. Okay, so thumb under, fingers on top, hold those ends together, tipping it toward the machine. And because I cut this on the bias, and because it's lightweight, even though I have it interfaced, it can stretch. So there's our first step. Now, we're going to clip this because this is going to turn like this, and it's going to turn over here. Now, you see this little thing here? We don't want that there. We want that out of the way, so we've got to trim this out along with a clip into the seam allowance. So that's not going to be pretty when we go to stitch that down. So that has to be done away with. Okay, and I believe, let me double check my clipping. The clipping goes in at a different angle. It goes like this. So what we want to do is clip right to that stitching. Okay, just make sure you can get a close-up of that. Just so you see, I'm clipping this at the opposite angle of this. And I'm clipping right up to that stitching. And I want to clip that tip of that thing right off. And sometimes that's not enough. So I'm going to see. And I can see now that it might not be. But you see how we've clipped this so that it'll turn easily. I'm going to flip it over here, and I see just a hair right here. So I'm going to go back in and trim a hair off. And the best tip I can give you on this process is take a little at a time until it's all gone.
And use those tailor points.
And use those tailor points because they get in there, and now you can really see what you're doing. Now we're going to press this down. Does anybody on here remember, especially if you're from Detroit, the Soupy Sales show? Soupy Sales was a kids show back in, I think, the 60s. And he had a character on there who all you ever saw was the hand. I think it was called Fang.
White Fang.
White Fang?
Wasn't it White Fang?
I don't remember. It was white. But anyways, Brenda's our Fang today. She's just going to reach in. She's over there pressing that in place for us. So she's just pressing that fold over nice and neat, because then we're going to top stitch it down in place. So we want to make sure that it is pressed nice and tight there. Thanks, Brenda. Okay, so now the only other thing we have to do while we're top stitching this down is to fold under 1/4 of an inch here.
Yeah, this one.
Oh, look, there's a little piece of that tip of that.
It flung over there.
Yeah, and it got stuck in the needle. Okay.
It's haunting you.
Yep. My glass is steamed up. Give me a second. It is steamy here, even with the air conditioning on. All right, so I'm going to come back to this end. Now, you notice that I put my needle down and my foot down, so that can't go anywhere.
After you folded it. Is that
Yes,
what you're
I folded it under and sealed it down by sticking the needle in and the foot down. Then I can come back to the other end and turn under the 1/4 of an inch. And get, I'm sticking to everything. Okay, so you see how that is? It just wants to lay under there. If you've got it 1/4 here and 1/4 here, it's pretty easy to get it to behave. And now we're just going to stitch a needle width away And I think I will dial it up to the 4.
Oh, Mary says your show, Soupy Sales, started in 53.
Oh, well.
But it did go into the 60s.
I lived in Lansing and not Detroit at the time, so it was a rare occasion. I think he was syndicated. But he was a very silly guy. He did some pretty silly things. One time, on New Year's Day, he told all the kids to go into their parents' wallets while they were still sleeping off their party, and send him all the money. He got in trouble for that. Of course, he was joking, I'm sure, but some of the kids actually did it. All right. So here we have it.
Okay.
Okay, I think my clip here probably should be going just a little further because I have to have a 1/4 inch seam allowance here. And I see a little thread I'll clip later. I think I'll clip the whole thing later. Anyway, so there is our overlap. Now we need to apply the underlap to the back of the sleeve.
All right, so Claudia's asking, is that the right side?
This is the right side of the shirt. You'll always know on this particular one, and that's why I chose, one of the reasons I chose this fabric, I'm hoping you can tell, wrong side has got a lot more white in the blue. When you can see that strong blue, you know we're on the right side. Okay, Brenda, can you press this and, just trim it up, whatever. Okay, so this is the back of our sleeve, and that gets the underlap. So we've pressed it again across that fold line on the pattern piece. And then we're going to apply it to the wrong side. Underlap. Fold, underlap, unfold. Yep. And then this should sit right here. We'll double check our notches. There they are. I'm on the wrong side, but I can still see them. Okay, so this is good. Whoops. All right, so I want to sew this. Now this one, we're going to sew it up and across. So we're going to do this again. Needle down, put the foot down, back up a stitch, and go forward. Thumb under, fingers on top, matching notches. Use your left hand to hold things into place. No, don't go another stitch. Okay. All right, now what do I do? Do I go all the way, I think, through the fold? Yes, I do. Okay, get it at the right angle because you want a really nice sharp angle there. And then go right to the end of that and then back up. All right, this is where I overshot it, but it doesn't matter because it's in the seam allowance. So what we want to do is trim this off, and then we need to make a clip up here. And let me just remember which way that clip goes. Okay, clip to fold.
Straight in, Brenda says.
Straight in, like this.
Yeah.
Okay. Right to the stitching. Now, we're going to turn this right side out and flip it to the right side. Now I want to use my point turner to make sure that gets nice and neat. And then I pass it off to Fang. All right, do you want to just show where we're at right here? So you can see it's kind of unruly without being pressed. So once we get that pressed, then we can turn under the quarter and top stitch a needle width away.
All right, so Josie asked, did you say not to clip the sleeve?
No, no.
If it's a woven fabric, is it only for the sleeve because it might ravel?
No, I only said that I clip for notches. So when you clip, instead of making a triangle or a jot in or whatever, you make a tiny little slit. The general rule for that slit, as a notch, is half the distance of the seam allowance. In the case of this shirt, some of our seam allowances are only 1/4 of an inch, which means I can only make an 1/8 inch slit. And because this is a fabric that is soft and likely to ravel, that 1/8 inch slit could grow if I'm not careful. So I'm being very careful and making very tiny slits. If I was using a basic shirting, I wouldn't even hesitate. I'd make those clips and not even worry about it. But because this is a softer, lighter fabric, I felt like it was going to maybe stretch out of place or stretch the clip too wide. Okay, so now, oh yeah, I got to finish this before I set those together. Okay, so now all we have to do is turn under 1/4 of an inch here and stitch that down just like we did with the overlap. I'm going to start from this end. And the only reason I start from this end is because I just am more comfortable. You may find, that, why is she doing it that way? That doesn't make sense to me. Well, if it doesn't make sense to you, then do it the other way. You might be left-handed. You might have a different way of handling the fabric, and it makes more sense to you. Okay. So again, I'm going to come back here, and I'm going to get this all under that 1/4 of an inch. And trust me, that's really snug there, so it might not measure an exact 1/4 of an inch depending on your stitch length and everything. Thumb under, fingers on top, and make sure you get that needle width away so you're nailing that right down and so it lays nice and flat. All right. Okay, now we have to sew the two pieces of the sleeve together. So we're going to lay them together, and you see how where we made these clips is where they're going to line up, and we're going to stitch this 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now, for those of you who feel comfortable and are proficient with the serger, you can just take this straight to the serger and stitch 1/4 inch seam allowance. But always when I'm instructing, I never know the expertise, the experience of who's watching here, so I try to give you the beginner concept, which is to do it in 2 steps. First, as you're learning the technique of sewing without pins, you're better off, get in there, to do it in 2 steps till you get comfortable. Then go for the 1 step. So again, we're going to serge this seam after we finish sewing it, which if you have a 4-thread serger, you could just go ahead and do a 4-thread serge at 1/4 inch seam allowance. It accomplishes exactly the same thing. But if you don't have a table surface around your serger, then do it on the sewing machine if you really want to learn this no pin sewing. So the sleeve is together now. I'm just going to run over and quickly serge it. And Jessica, you can check and see if we have any questions in the meantime. Excuse me, Sarge. I'm not in your way, am I? Okay. And that was it.
Roll on back.
And then Fang's got to press it. And then we'll top stitch it. And then we'll put it in the arm side. Can you hand me the shirt that's behind you, Jess?
Sure.
You got a hand free.
I'm a Fang number 2.
Fang number 2. White Fang and blue Fang. If you haven't got one of these great little 6-inch rulers, these are great to have. I've got one at the ironing station, one at every machine, and we do have them on our website, so maybe the next time you're shopping, you might want to throw one of those in your cart. They're perfect for beside the machine, and they measure quarter, 3/8, half, 5/8, just exactly what you need. Thank you, ma'am. Oh, that's right. We got to put a pleat in, too. And did I mark the pleat? I did not. Unless I marked it with... No, I didn't, Brenda.
No.
So, let me go ahead and top stitch this, and you see if you can find me the mark for the pleat. All right, so... We had it out several times. Oh, no, I want to go this way. All right. So we've pressed the seam allowance toward the front. Right? Yep, toward the front. And now we're just going to top stitch a needle width away. And what this does is it not only adds... Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. Wait a minute. Stop. All right.
That was a test.
That was a test. So we want to come down 1 inch from the tip. Yes, 1 inch from the tip.
And that's why you had the ruler out. And then you forgot.
Yep. I get busy talking. All right. So we're going to, in this one, we're going to start here, come across, and go up. On the other sleeve, I'd do the exact opposite, but you do need to have it marked. Okay, so remember, needle width away. And I was starting to say the reason that we do this top stitching is it does give it a more professional, tailored look, but it also seals that seam down so that in laundry or anything else, that seam won't want to come up. But you know, if you haven't top stitched seams down, they flop from right to left and get all messy underneath. Where if you have them stitched down, either You can also double top stitch. We talked about that for a sporty look. You could do that as well. This seam is only 1/4 of an inch wide, so you couldn't double top stitch very wide. They'd have to be a narrow double top stitch. But there it is. Now we're going to put the sleeve in the arm side.
I'll mark that.
Oh yeah, can you mark that? Yeah, we're going to put down here, we almost missed it, the sleeve pleat. So you're going to have 2 notches. You can mark them with some chalk, and it's a really simple process.
All right, while Brenda's doing that, Donna was asking, did you serge with 3 threads since you already sewed the seam with the...
Yes, absolutely. No sense in wasting thread or adding bulk to the seam. If you were to use 4 thread just to sew it together and finish it at the same time, it won't add any bulk. But if I stitched it, then I 4 thread stitched it, I've added a small amount of bulk. All right. So always remember that notches on a sleeve go toward the back. The back. The back. This is wrong.
Oops.
This is wrong.
That is right. That is wrong.
This should lap this
I
way.
went. Put the wrong ones on.
I don't know, Brenda. I don't know what we did here because we've done
Got it
this.
right on the other.
Yeah. Let me just see. Because it has to lap toward the back. That's why I caught it, because your sleeve. Yeah. I'll have to figure out what we did wrong here. But it's okay. Just ignore that. I'm going to show you how to put the pleat in, and I'll show you one I did right earlier today. So we're going to take this chalk, and you put it on that chalk mark,
Can you
right?
do that again so I can get a little bit closer?
So these are our notches for our pleat, and you just lay them by folding the fabric on top of each other, and then you want to stitch them down within the seam allowance so that you don't have to take it out. And then I like to do a basting stitch about 1 inch up so that it just stays in place when I go to put the cuff on. Okay.
Well, you had to use that stitch ripper.
All right. So let's see if we did. Yeah. So this one overlaps to the back, and there's the notch. So the notch should go to the back. The overlap should go over the back. Okay. So there you go. That's what it should look like. Now I'm going to put the sleeve in.
Here it is. All right,
All right.
there. It's just not stitched, but
Okay. So here's our sleeve. We're going to always put the sleeve against the feed dog. Always. Because we have things to ease in here. And then we're going to match the notches in the arm side. Right sides together. And I'm going to start at the underarm, of course. And this is the back. So you see these notches I kind of split here, but this notch I mark with chalk. Again, I got a little nervous about it stretching out. So this is a 3/8 inch seam allowance. But I want you to remember that we're going to not straighten out the curve. So many people, when I'm teaching classes, I see them go like this, and they straighten it out. Oh yeah, they get a nice straight seam. But the arm side just doesn't have that nice gentle curve anymore because it's been kind of stitched out of place. So before I go, I'll get the right up to the double notch. And again, we want to feed the fabric in on the curve, not straighten it out. And then I'm going to come back and find the notch on the sleeve cap and match it to the notch on the yoke. And then I'm going to reach back here and make sure that all the edges stay even. Okay. All right. Okay, then we find our next notch. And let's see. Jump right here. That's good. Okay, now we have something to ease in, so we're going to pull the sleeve back as we stitch it in place. Oops. Get over there. I want you to see how I curve that around and follow the curve of the arm side. Okay, so now our sleeve is in. Once you have put several sleeves in, you can again do this with a 4-thread serger, especially if you have an extension table or a cabinet. Otherwise, stitch it first, then go and 3-thread serge it. And I did one earlier today that you can see, and then we top stitched it down a needle width away. So that's what your sleeve should look like. A nice little pleat, the overlap going toward the back, the underlap underneath, and then obviously the same thing on the other side. So now you should have both sleeves in.
Fang led you astray. Since both of those can go either way, that's a tip. Check it. Make sure the overlap is on top and the underlap is on the bottom. So
Okay.
check it.
So Fang led me astray, she's telling me, when we went to do this,
When I pressed it.
when you pressed it,
Yes, I pressed it.
the
Wrong.
opposite way. But now all we have to do is take it out
It is out and ready to,
and
just always check it.
always check it. All right, so now we have corrected, and now all I have to do is now I can do my, I already did the top stitching, right? Yeah, so I just have to complete the stitching. So let me come around here. We'll get this guy ready. This is an area where people get confused, not just Fang. And the thing is, no, I'm doing it backwards again. But what I always check, because I've made so many shirts, is that I make sure that it's all lapping toward the back. The pleat should go toward the back. The overlap should go toward the back. So we need to mark our 1 inch down from the point. I've got a lot of threads I got to take care of here. So we'll just right here. All right. I hate little pokey out threads. Excuse me. Get those in there. I think I'm not quite on the edge. And then I'll just meet up with that top stitching. And the beauty of a machine that cuts the threads, I won't have those threads hanging out on the top because when I hit that, it pulls them to the bottom. So I don't have to worry about that. So I just have some extra threads hanging out here from the, but there it is.
All right, let's see that because Mary says that she loves the sleeve placket. It's worth the price of the pattern just for that, she said.
Oh, okay. There are so many different types of sleeve plackets. It's kind of fun to explore some of them. But that's what you should do. And then after you serge your sleeve cap, press the seam allowance toward the shirt. And then from the right side, top stitch it just like we did everywhere else, a needle width away. So your sleeve looks like that. And then next week, we'll finish up the cuffs and the hem. Oh, of course, the underarm and side seam. And put the cuffs on, and I'll show you how to double turn a hem. And your shirt will be done.
All right. Don't have any more questions. I am, since I'm standing and closer now, excuse me, I'm going to pan over to these flannels so people can get a little bit closer look on them and how beautiful that they are. And I put a link on the website. Just some really fun, something for everybody.
Oh, I see. I still have time. You know what? I'm going to do an underarm and side seam. So we'll have that done for next week too. We can go straight into the cuffs. Oh wait, no I'm not. I've got to make some final adjustments for Brenda's sleeve. So no I'm not. Changed my mind. But anyway, it's almost done. If you're like me, you can't stand it. You want to get it done. Because now you can see how pretty it's going to be. And you can't wait to try it on. So...
Oh gosh, yeah, Donna, you'll have fun with that. She says, I joined late, so I'll watch the video from the beginning to figure out what this fang thing is all about. It's things you don't even think about. Like, this is going to go down in time. Like, what are they talking about? All right, everybody, thank you for joining us. We hope your shirt is turning out, or at least you're learning some great things from us. And we will be back next Tuesday at
2 o'clock Eastern Time for Islander Sewing Systems Tuesday at 2. And don't forget, all of the sew-alongs are in the playlist of our YouTube channel. So you'll be able to find that everybody's there as well. It's not complete, but there's a lot of complete ones there, including the Islander shirt, the Easy V like I'm wearing, and 5 Easy Tees is there. There's so much there. So take a look and see if anything strikes your fancy. Get you sewing for the fall.
We'll see you next week.
Thanks for coming, everyone. Bye-bye.